Hey, what's up guys, it's Disturbed, and today I'm going to show you guys an absolutely amazing PvP build that's going to be great when playing with a team, and it'll also give your team a huge advantage when fighting against other players because you're going to be giving a lot of CC and just overall extra sustainability to the team with the way that you're going to be using this build. So yeah, let's get right into it. Actually, before I get into it, I do want to mention that I'm not going to have gameplay. I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, you don't have gameplay, so that means that this build sucks. No, that's not it at all. It's just because, for one, I don't like the fact that this build exists. I know that it's really good, and that's why I'm making a video on it, because a lot of people are perfectly content with using it. I just think it's a little bit cheesy because you're going to be utilizing things that bleed, and I personally don't think that status effects should be in PvP, so I just feel cheesy even using it. But on top of that, I only play solo when I do PvP, so I couldn't really get any team gameplay. Or sometimes I play like with one or two other friends, but 90% of the time I only play solo, so that's why I didn't get any gameplay. Also, I wanted to get this video out, and I literally just finished the build tonight. So yeah, sorry I don't have gameplay, but I assure you 1,000,000%, go try the build out yourself. When playing with a team, it's really great to have at least one person with it. So getting into the build, there are two different ways that you can do this. One way is using Predator's Mark, and the other way is using Firecrest. With Predator's Mark, you're getting the status effect from your gun, and putting that bleed on people is going to make it to where they can't run around anymore, and that's extremely powerful. You aren't going to be doing as much damage, but as long as you have one person in your team using Predator's Mark, you get that bleed on people, and then since they can't run or sprint anymore, it makes it extremely easy to kill them. Also, if you're like chasing rogues or something, Predator's Mark is great. So that's what I'm going to be using in this build today. I know that a lot of you might not think Predator's Mark is the greatest, but I assure you, when having one person with this in your team, it is extremely helpful. Because putting somebody on a bleed makes it to where they can't run, and that really hinders their gameplay. It might not, on paper, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but it really is. Now, going into just how I overall set the build up, don't pay attention to the DPS stat or toughness, or, I mean, you can pay attention to toughness and skill power, but DPS stat is really not representative of your overall damage because, for example, two of the talents that I have in my gun don't even get activated by the DPS, or I mean, what am I saying? I'm really tired, so I'm gonna have trouble articulating myself. But these two talents don't really influence your DPS stat at all, because Unforgiving is situational, and so is Responsive, technically. So these aren't even getting accounted into the DPS stat, so just don't even pay attention to that. I know that it's kind of low, but this build is going to be focused around CCing and just overall helping your team out, as opposed to just doing a lot of damage. But you're still going to be doing a decent amount of damage because you are using an LVOA. And then with Predator's Mark, you get the built-in, reload speed, which is nice, and then the assault rifle damage, which is cool. And then the bleed does do an okay amount of damage as well. Though, keep in mind, this build is not going to be anywhere as close to as good as Alpha Bridge is in terms of damage. It's just great to use this or have at least one person with this in PvP when you're playing with a team, because, again, putting somebody on that bleed is really powerful. You could also use Firecrest kind of the same way. They are kind of different though, because putting a bleed just makes it to where they can't run. Firecrest makes it to where they can't really do anything, but with Firecrest you have to play around the fire turret. With this, it only relies on your gun, so that's really nice. But the way I have it set up here is I got 4 Predator's Mark, and then I'm going to be running a specialized backpack. The reason I'm doing this is to make my Seeker Mines extremely powerful. Since I am wanting this build to be focused around crowd control, Seeker Mines are absolutely amazing for that, and stacking skill power make it to where my Seeker Mines do a shitload of damage. I'll show a clip at the end here. My Seeker Mines literally do somebody's health like in half when they have over 400k toughness. It does half their health if I hit them. It's absolutely insane. So having this much skill power is great. Also makes my heal me for almost 140k, which is absolutely insane. The reason that my skill power is so high is because I'm going to be using specialized backpack, pair that with skill power on my mask as opposed to crit chance or something. I'll get into that later, but adding up all the skill power makes my Seeker Mines extremely dangerous and my heal really great. If I could, there's another way that you could do this is just go with a Predator's Mark backpack and then go with Savage Gloves, but I thought that since I wanted this build to be focused around playing with the team and not really doing all that much damage, just trying to help out the team with bleeds and stutter and just overall crowd control, I felt that going for Specialized is probably going to be better than going for Savage Gloves with a Predator's Mark backpack, because I don't really care that much about 7% crit chance, but getting my Seeker Mine up can be really helpful because, I mean, you throw a Seeker Mine, you bleed somebody, you throw a Seeker Mine, and when they don't see it, they get hit by that Seeker Mine, that's half their health gone, and then you have 2 of your teammates shoot at him for half a second, he's done, he's cake. So getting that extra skill power makes your Seeker Mines extremely powerful, and then, it makes your heals really well, or I can't speak. It makes your heals really powerful as well too, so that's pretty nice. I mean, 140k is almost all my health, so that's insane. And then, of course, I'm going to be using a Barrett's chest piece. The reason I'm doing this is just because it's overpowered. For one, I get an extra 10% skill power, which is great when I first use my Secret Mines, and then I just get extra damage, and then when both my skills are on cooldown, I get a lot of armor and damage resistance, so that's great. And then of course, using the 4 Predator's Mark for the bleed. You can use 3 Firecrests if you want, but that's probably a separate build because you're going to be playing differently with that. With this build, you utilize your gun, but with Firecrest, you have to play around a fire turret and do certain things with that, so that's why this build is going to be a little bit different. In terms of your guns, as you can see here, from the 3 set, you get 8% assault rifle and SMG damage, so it would make sense to use an assault rifle or an SMG. In a later video, I'm going to be talking about how SMGs aren't viable in patch 1.5. This is simply due to the fact that assault rifles, specifically the LVOAC, is significantly better by almost a country mile. So in this build, I'm going to be prioritizing an LVOAC. I normally never run out of ammo, so I don't even care about what my secondary is. I just have a FAMAS. You could, if you want to, you can go with just a second LVOAC or something, or you could go with an SMG if you're worried about running out of ammo. I never tend to run out of ammo, so I just have the one LVOAC, and this is going to be the best gun in the game. Or this is the best gun in the game, so this is definitely going to be your best bet in terms of what you want to run. Now, since you are limited to only 3 talents, it is rather important which ones you pick. I didn't have that many standalone LVOAs, and I didn't want to ruin the one that I use with Alpha Bridge. So this one is decent. I would say just make sure to get responsive. And then Unforgiving is good, but then I realized that I'm not going to be playing solo, so in a team, Unforgiving it probably isn't that great, but I'd recommend something along the lines of responsive, unforgiving, vicious, brutal, and competent. Those are probably the best talents you can be getting. Or you could just use a FAMAS and have uncomplicated, but unforgiving is really powerful. Brutal is decent if you're landing headshots. Responsive is probably the best. Competent is okay, but when you're using Secret Mines, it takes a little bit for it to proc. But since you are playing in a team, that could be good. So competent could be really good. Just get a combination of some of those talents. If my ideal role would probably be responsive, vicious, and then competent, or instead of vicious, unforgiving. It just really depends. Unforgiving is great when you're playing solo, but when you're playing with a team, it might not be that good because you're not going to be always low on health with your team proccing combat medic and all this other stuff. So unforgiving is really good when solo though. Alright, moving on, I'm just going to be going over individual roles really quickly here because I'm sure many of you already know this. Health, just pretty no-brainer there. You can also go for exotic damage resilience if people are using seekers and stuff against you. Of course, you're going to be going for armor. My mask is pretty shitty, probably the only shit piece that I have in this entire build. I want enemy armor damage here because that's like flat 3% damage. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it, but it is what it is. And then for the major attribute, I was going to go for a crit chance, but then I realized, might as well just go for extra skill power if I really, really am adamant about wanting my Secret Mine to be that powerful. And I think it's a good trade-off, but if you don't think it's worth it, feel free to just go back to crit chance or something else. I just like this extra skill power just to make sure that my Secret Mines are extremely powerful, and that they are. I can like do somebody's health, or I can do half of somebody's health near instantly, which is crazy. Moving on to knee pads, of course, you're going to go for armor and then enemy armor damage on the 3rd slot there. On a backpack, I went for specialized. You could go for Predator's Mark, of course, and then you're just going to be going for armor. On my gloves here, pretty simple, assault rifle damage, and crit chance. And then on the holster, armor. Most of my rolls here are pretty much perfect. The armor roll on my bear chest piece could be a little bit higher, and my mask could have enemy armor damage and a higher base stam roll. But overall, everything else is really good. Really high armor there, pretty good armor here, extremely high armor here, and really good base stats. The electronics is rather low, but it's not that big of a deal. This has pretty decent armor and a good firearms roll. Yeah, this piece is probably the only bad piece, and this piece is actually still really good. Decent stam roll. So overall, my pieces are pretty good. I just prefer to have a better thing here. But my toughness is still really high. I have 54% armor, which is really nice, and about 6100 stam. You can go for more firearms if you want to, but I'm happy with the way that it is, just having like a nice little middle ground there. In terms of your skills, of course, like I mentioned before, I'm going to be running with Overdose. You can actually go for Booster Shot if you want. Since your skill power, since with my build I'm stacking so much skill power, you can also alternatively do the build where you're not stacking a lot of skill power, but I like to do that just to make the Secret Mine really powerful. You could go for Booster Shot because it's going to heal you for just as much. The only problem is that you're not going to be getting that overshield. But if you give yourself a Booster Shot and you shoot it in the middle, and since it is going to be with a team, you can have all your teammates get that extra damage resistance and damage boost, and it won't be hurting you that much because you are getting the damage resistance built in from that, and it'll also be healing you a lot because your skill power is so high. So Booster Shot would be a great alternative. And then for your skill, I would definitely recommend with going for Cluster Secret Mines. You could decide to go for Fire Turret if you want to, or maybe even Shock Turret. The Fire Turret, 252,000 HP, Fire turrets are absolutely insane. I just thought that using Predator's Mark with Seeker Mines is really powerful, just to make sure that somebody's always on a bleed. And Seeker Mines do about half of somebody's health, and then you could just have somebody else in your team running a fire turret or something. You could even have one person running Predator's Mark, one person running fire turret, and then 2 people running Alpha Bridge if you want to be the definition of tumor in the Dark Zone. If you want to be that evil, you'd probably steamroll absolutely everybody with that, maybe even 2 people with Fire Crest, because flame turrets are absolutely insane, and then having the Seeker Mines just almost one-shot somebody, and then with the damage from Alpha Bridge, you'd be absolutely just destroying everybody in the Dark Zone. So just depends on what you want to do with your team composition and whatnot. In terms of your talents, you could probably change these up a lot. The way that I have it set up right now is when I was solo PvPing, but there's multiple ways you can change this. You can use on the move. I'm probably always going to be using this, kill a hostile while moving to reduce incoming damage. With the mob density of NPCs being so high in the Dark Zone, this is great. You just kill an NPC, instant 30% damage reduction. That's awesome. Precision, this is probably one of the talents you could trade off when playing in a group, and then you could go for something else, something like chain reaction, damage multiple hostiles with an explosion. I don't think this is going to be that great because you're not trying to one-shot people with the Seeker Mines, so not that big of a deal, but you could trade off precision because a lot of people in your team are going to be running a pulse, but it just is what it is. You can decide whether or not you want to do that. You could run chain reaction like I said, but it's not going to be that great because, I mean, it's only 20% more damage and you're not trying to one-shot people, so that 20% damage isn't going to make that big of a difference with your Seeker Mines. You're just trying to hit people. You're just trying to do a decent amount of their health while getting them on a bleed and ensuring that they're constantly on a bleed so that they're hindered and they have to either roll, which will result in them probably getting shot at really easily, or they have to just slowly walk around, which will again result in them getting shot at easily and most likely dying extremely fast. So that's why the bleed is extremely powerful. You can go for tactical advance, you could go for adrenaline, you could go for triage, you could go for critical save, extra damage resistance, you could go for combat medic. I definitely wouldn't recommend going strike back when you're playing in a team, or with a team, because if you get low health, just have one of your friends pop a combat medic. I definitely, since this build is oriented for team play, combat medic is an absolute must, so definitely make sure to do that there. And then adrenaline, pair that with combat medic, make sure everybody's always in overshield. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it for the build. Right here you can just see that my Seeker Mines do like half of somebody's health just to prove it to you. But besides that, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.